Good morning, and I'll start this off. First of all, I want to thank you all for being here. I can't emphasize enough how important, and you all know this is your profession, your life, but how important it is for the media, the press, to report what's going on in our city and our police department with the state of our city, and we appreciate having the opportunity to speak to you this morning. So before the mayor takes the microphone, I want to say a few words and introduce our mayor, London Breed. You know, it's been an incredible year. 2020, first part of 2021, has been a very challenging year for all of us. And I can't be more proud of being a part of a city under the leadership of our mayor, London Breed, because in 2020, we saw what true leadership means. We saw what courage means. And in the midst of a global pandemic, San Francisco was the first to take action to really get in front of what was facing us. And we saw the results. We led across the board in terms of big cities, the amount of preventing death. The shelter-in-place order, which our mayor's leadership started really a national movement on shelter-in-place. And then we got into June with the George Floyd murder and the civil unrest that followed that. And again, our mayor played a key role in having our city, even though we had our issues, step up and respond to the challenge, to get the resources that we needed to really put the riots and the civil unrest and the looting and the fires and all that down very quickly. And we saw where a lot of cities continue to have problems for months. We saw really a peaceful summer here in San Francisco last year, given all that was going on in our country. So leadership is important. People are important. Staffing is important. And we're going to talk a little bit about all that today. But the other thing that I'd like to say that with our mayor and staffing and all the issues that I just brought up, it didn't just start when she became mayor. You know, Mayor Breed was, I think, the first supervisor that I met when I got here in the Board of Supervisors, and she has been supportive from the day that I arrived. And I just want to highlight and lift that up because it is really, really important. And I appreciate it. The members of the San Francisco Police Department appreciate it. And I know the people of San Francisco appreciate her leadership. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our mayor, London Breed.
Thank you, Chief. And it definitely is great to be here with all of you in person today. It has been a very, very challenging 15 months. And to be here in person is so significant. We appreciate it a lot more, I'm sure, as a result of what we had to do in terms of our actions during COVID. But here we are, San Francisco, with over 82% of our residents who have been vaccinated. We're doing great in comparison to other major cities, and I'm really proud and grateful to the people of this city who really stepped up and made that difference. But now what we're seeing is a whole nother spotlight being placed on San Francisco. On the one hand, with COVID, what we've seen is, just a lot of praise and a lot of support, and San Francisco has gotten a lot of great attention as it relates to COVID, but sadly, as it relates to crime, we've gotten a lot of negative attention. And when you think about where we were last year, the holiday, during July 4th, we saw an unprecedented number of shootings and other things that have occurred here in our city. Sadly, we saw the death of a young 6-year-old boy in the Bayview Hunters Point community, young Jace Young, and it was heartbreaking. And when I think about what happened last year with violent crime and where we were even this past 4th of July weekend, we saw not one homicide over that weekend time period. So just this recently, Lori Lightfoot was here from Chicago, and I'm sure many of you have been hearing about the unprecedented amount of gun violence in Chicago, almost 100 shootings over the holiday weekend. And here in San Francisco, even with our challenges, we're nowhere near that. So we should be really proud that we've gotten to a better place. Not perfect, but we are at a better place. And what's being highlighted now? We're seeing a lot of the attacks on many of our elderly, in particular our Asian seniors. We're seeing a number of thefts in our retail. And those videos are not just going viral in San Francisco, they're going viral all over the world. But what's not going viral, what's not being brought to the forefront is the fact that in almost every single instance, our police department have arrested many of the people in these particular crimes. There have been arrests, sadly, in the death of Jace Young. There have been arrests of the guy who, we saw the viral video of him riding a bicycle into the Walgreens and stealing. He has been arrested and is currently in custody awaiting trial. In the case of the man who was walking home from the post office, who was stabbed and robbed, his perpetrator has been arrested. In the case of the man in the Franklin Street Market, a beloved member of the community who sadly lost an eye, his perpetrator has been arrested. The elderly woman waiting at the bus stop, 2 people stabbed, that perpetrator has been arrested. So what is not getting the attention is the fact that when you come to San Francisco and commit a crime, you will be arrested by the police department. Our investigators and the work that they do to bring people to justice has been extraordinary. And in fact, when we talk about the burglaries and the car break-ins, at least 1,000 car break-ins every single month perpetrated by 10 groups of people. So when those folks are arrested, we see those car break-ins go down significantly. At the end of the day, we have to make sure that accountability is a part of this. And one of the big conversations that's happening around defunding the police is not taking into account all the incredible work San Francisco has done to invest in programs that help to prevent crimes from happening in the first place. An unprecedented investment of $65 million in my budget to help with street violence prevention, to help with victim services, to help with all the incredible work. I see Lynn Wesley here. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for the work that you do to reach out to the families who sadly are victims of violent crimes. There's a lot of investment going into preventing these crimes from happening. Our wellness teams of folks who are out in the communities checking on those who are suffering from mental illness and drug addiction. Our meth sobering center. Our street crisis response team that are responding now to a lot of those calls where people don't know what to do when they see someone screaming and kind of unresponsive in the streets. Mental health beds, an unprecedented investment, 351 new mental health beds. All of these things are a part of our network of trying to address public safety. It's not just about funding the police or defunding the police. It's not just about funding one program over another. It's about a comprehensive strategy to make sure that the right investments are being made to deal with the challenges that exist. So going back to COVID, we used the data, we used the science when it came to talking about how we should make investments, what we should do as a city. And that's what we did in this year's budget. And so the chief today is going to talk a lot about the statistics because there's a lot of misinformation out there about what's happening in San Francisco. We know that numbers don't matter when you're the victim of a crime, in any capacity, but at the end of the day, we have to use this data to make a decision about our policies and our investments. So in the coming months, we are going to be making some significant changes. We are not prepared to reveal all of our plans to help address some of these issues around these retail thefts and really holding companies accountable like Amazon and other places to not do their due diligence to vet these stolen goods, or the issues around prosecution and misdemeanors and other things. We have to definitely make sure there are tools to hold people accountable. But more importantly, we have to look at the data and allow that to help guide us. And finally, as we move forward, we need police officers. We have a number of officers retiring. This work just doesn't happen. We have a number of officers retiring. We have others leaving the force for different reasons. We at least need to backfill those officers. And I am hopeful that our academy classes and the work that we're doing with our chief to make those investments and to bring more officers into the department and out on the streets to help prevent crimes as well will be significant. In addition to working with our department, our ambassadors, our mid-market plans, all of these great things that we're trying to do has everything to do with prevention and also accountability. We have to react when a crime is committed, but the best thing, the best case scenario is to make sure that crime never happens in the first place. Here in San Francisco, yes, like any major city, we have our challenges. But at the end of the day, we are going to continue to work hard to step up and to do everything we can to make the right investments, to make the arrests, to hold people accountable, and to do what we can to look at the data and make the appropriate changes to our system for the safety of our city. So I want to thank all of you for being here today. I, again, want to thank the men and women of the police department. And I hope that if you take nothing from this event, this press conference today, that you go down the laundry list of all of those crimes that have been committed here in San Francisco over the past year. And you look, especially the violent crimes in particular, and you look at the arrests that have been made of the perpetrators in those cases. And you start to highlight those in a way that they've been highlighted in terms of when the crimes were committed and the videos went viral. Because if you look at that and you see the incredible work that goes into the investigation part of it, the arrest, and all of the things that this San Francisco Police Department is doing to bring justice to those families who are victims, you would be proud of the work that they've done. I truly am. So thank you all so much for being here today, and thank you, Chief Scott. And at this time, he will go over the statistics so you can see the comparison of the past couple of years of where we are with the crimes in San Francisco and see for yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Reed. So I know the mayor touched on public perceptions, and I think it's important that we start today by acknowledging people's fears about crime, particularly when these videos go viral, as the mayor said. I mean, these things, they get in our head, and people start to believe that is our city, but that is not our city. In today's news conference, I'm going to show you some comparative numbers from our latest CompStat report, and just think of this as a mid-year check-in. For those who don't know what Compstat is, it really stands for computer statistics. It's a program that police departments across the country use to inform public safety strategies and to inform about basically the state of where their cities are in terms of crime statistics. It allows us to better deploy to reduce those crimes and prevent them, as the mayor said. The data measure represents incidents, but let me be very clear about something. About two things. Those numbers that you're about to see represent human beings. They represent people. So I don't want to be dehumanizing when I talk about numbers and statistics. We understand, particularly we understand, because we see it day in and day out, that these are people. These are our brothers, sisters, nephews, nieces, aunts, friends that are being victimized. And it's really important that we take a step back and remember that statistics represent people. The other thing is there is no statistic for brazenness. You know, what we see on some of these videos are just brazen, heinous crimes, and there's no statistic for what that does to our outlook on how we perceive what's happening in our city. And that's why police officers are so important, because they balance that fear of crime. Most people feel more comfortable when they see officers in their neighborhood. I know I do. And I would venture to say that most of us in this room feel more comfortable when they see officers in our neighborhood. So that's part of the adjustment to balance what we see on these videos with the reality of our officers being on the beat, being on the streets, being in the communities to make people feel safer. These crimes aren't as frequent as many people would think, but it's still unsettling. And as the mayor said, most of these crimes we have solved, and we will continue to do that. So I want to start by really lifting up what's going on here in our city, and it starts with the members of the San Francisco Police Department. You know, I'm the chief of police. You see command staff members on the wall here. He's the mayor, who's the leader of our city. but really the work is being done by the members, the patrol officers, the investigators that are on the street day in and day out, solving crimes, preventing crimes, intervening, working with the community, and doing what we need to do to keep our city safe. But still, even when we have everything to work right, it seems like it's not enough. And you've heard this cliche before, we can't arrest our way out of problems, and I believe that is true. But we do need to make arrests, make no mistake about it. We need to hold people accountable. The other side of that equation is officers on the beat. I know this mayor, from day one and even before, has been very, very definitive about the need to have officers on the beat. And she supported our budget, she supported the staffing, and we need to have the staffing to have officers on the beat to balance the other side of the equation. Holding people accountable and making arrests, that will always be one half of the equation. But the other side that we struggle with is keeping enough officers on the streets where you see them in your communities, where we can prevent a lot of what eventually happens from happening. According to City Beat, and this was the City Beat poll that was released last month, 75% of San Franciscans want more SFPD officers in high crime areas. 76% of San Franciscans want expanded community policing to their neighborhoods. And 64% of San Franciscans want more SFPD officers in busy areas like Union Square, Hayes Valley, where we have these brazen crimes that we've seen on video, Chinatown included. That's why we are so appreciative of what's happening with the mayor's leadership, with the men and women of our police department, with community members that are calling to staff this department adequately so we can do our jobs. And that is not going to go away. We will continue to advocate for what we need to keep this city safe. Now, we can never lose sight of the fact that every number, as I said, represents a human being, and even when someone has suffered a loss of injury, sometimes the damage is irrevocable. People have to live with these consequences. Homicides, we have people in this room that have lost members of their family to homicides, both in uniform and out of uniform. We have people in this family that have had their houses burglarized, that have had their cars broken into, and we all know how it feels when that happens to you. You don't care about statistics. You don't care the crime is going down or going up. What you care about is it happened to me, and it just turned my life upside down. And we understand that. And that's why it is so important to work with our community. Through the mayor's leadership and the mayor's urging, in October of this year, we established a community liaison unit to help people get through the turmoil of being victimized, to provide a better service. We want to prevent it in the first place, but when it happens, people need support. They need to know how to navigate the system, and they need help. And that's what the Community Liaison Unit does, under the leadership of Deputy Chief Dave Lazar and Commander Darrell Fong. So let's go to our statistics. This is our mid-year statistics, and how we're going to frame this conversation is show you not only year-to-date mid-year statistics, but we're going to take a look back so you can compare where we were in 2016, 17, 18, same time of year. And actually it adds a little bit of perspective, because one of the things that makes this year challenging and unique when we look at statistics is last year was an aberration. You know, we had people that were inside their homes. We didn't have the tourists that we normally have. And so it's really hard to get a gauge on where we are in crime when you only look at last year. So we're going to look at 2019, 2018, 2017, so you can get a perspective of where we are as compared to where we've been. And we're going to start with homicides at mid-year. And as you can see with our homicides, we are up somewhat from where we were this time last year. And if you look at 2019, 2018, 2017, you see pretty consistent numbers mid-year, 2018, 2019, 2020, and then we're up 4 this year. If you go back to 2017, we're down pretty significantly from 2017, even from 2016, and up slightly a bit from 2015. The next slide. Before we move on to homicides, let me say a few things about that. Some of our strategies that we've introduced this year on homicide include a partnership with an entity called the California Partnerships for Safe Communities, and one of the things among the many that we want to do with Homicides is really, and this speaks to what the mayor said earlier, really address some of the root causes. You know, our investigators do a magnificent job in terms of solving homicide cases. We're at about a 92% clearance rate for homicides, or 90% clearance rate for homicides year to date. But the other side of that is, what can we do for the individuals most at risk for being involved in a shooting or a homicide, either as a victim or as a perpetrator? What can we do for those individuals and their families to try to prevent it? Our strategy moving forward is to really get to that issue, and that speaks to the funding that the mayor talked about, this partnership with the California Partnerships for Safe Communities. We've hired life coaches to identify people who are the most at risk, which coincidentally are people of color, black and brown men, and we really want to address it from that angle. Now, that's not necessarily policing. We are a conduit to get services to these families that are the most at risk. But I want to be clear, our job is to prevent crime, to solve crime, and to get other people involved to address those issues to make this situation better. Let's go to gun violence. When you look at gun violence since 2016, this is where we are having some challenges. As you see, 2021, we're almost double where we were this time last year in terms of gun violence. And this reflects shooting victims in both fatal and non-fatal shootings. 2020, 2019, we were in the mid-50s. 2018, we were at 80. 2017, we were at 90. So when you go back several years, you can see that we're not terribly higher than we were in 2016, 17, and 18, but we're almost double where we were the last 2 years, and that is a huge concern. So part of the strategies that I just mentioned will help address that. We've gotten some traction from that. It also builds relationships with the community members that are necessary to actually get a handle on this issue. On my left, you have Acting Commander Carl Fabry. We have Commander Pete Walsh. They're a big part of this, along with our Investigations Bureau and our Director, Tiffany Sutton, that's really bringing all this together. And our strategies on gun violence are holistic. We have to get a handle on this. The other issue with gun violence are illegal ghost guns. The number of illegal ghost guns that we've confiscated over the past 4 years, and we don't have this chart on there, but the information has been available and we've made it public, has increased exponentially. These are unserialized guns that are made in people's garages, in their kitchens, or wherever they choose to make them. They're dangerous, they're unregulated, they're untraceable, and they're a problem for our city. So through our Crime Gun Investigation Center, which is under our Investigations Bureau, we are addressing that with help of our partners from ATF and our federal partners, and we hope to continue a record. We have an increase in confiscation of those guns, and we hope to continue to do that to take guns off of the streets so they can't get in the hands of the people that are driving these numbers up. Next, we'll go to sexual assaults. So as you can see, here's an area that I'm pleased to say is far below where it was the last few years. When you look at 2019 to 2020, there was a significant drop in sexual assaults. And 2021, we continue to go down in that area. Still, that's 88 victims that have been sexually assaulted, far too many. Our investigators in our Special Victims Unit are responsible for investigation of these crimes. We're working with our district attorney and the advocacy groups who really have been pushing on better sexual assault responses, including treatment and services to the victims of sexual assault. So that's a part of our plan, if you will, to get better in all of those areas. I mean, we do okay, but we can always get better. We jumped on sexual assaults from 11 cases in May of 2021 to 19 cases in June, and that's a huge increase from a month-to-month perspective. So definitely it's something that we want to keep an eye on because that's concerning, and we want to make sure that we keep control of that. Next, we'll go to robberies. Robberies, as you can see, again, videos drive perception. And when you see people getting robbed, when you see elderly victims in our city getting robbed and those videos go viral, you think, oh my goodness, things are out of control. Well, here's the reality. The reality is that our robberies from 2018 to date, year to date, have gone down each year. We hope to continue that by year's end, and if we can continue the trend, we hope to keep this going. Now, robberies are one of the categories where cops in the street matter. And hear me on this one. Police officers in the streets really matter when it comes to driving down robberies, because people are less likely to rob people when they see officers nearby. That's just a reality. It's proven, it's tried and true. It matters. Deployment matters. And I'm going to say this over and over again because I can't say it enough. We need officers on the streets to keep this going in the right direction. And some of our high traffic corridors, particularly our tourist areas, people walking around, enjoying themselves when they come here and visit our city, we have to see police officers out there. The mayor's mid-market vibrancy plan in the Tenderloin, we have increased our deployment pretty significantly over the last month and a half. We have seen robberies cut by, I believe the number's 38% in that area. It matters when police officers are on their beats, particularly foot beats, and when they're able to stay out on their beats, robberies go down. So we want to continue that trend and make sure that we keep that going in the right direction. Aggravated assaults is our next category. And if you look at the 5-year period, again, this is some of the videos that we see, aggravated assaults that are happening that go viral. But when you look at where we are now compared to where we were just 3 years ago, we're actually doing okay. Now, I want to say this. We know that not all crimes are reported. There's always, besides homicides, there's always a degree of underreporting of crime. And we encourage people to report if they're victimized, because that's how we know what's going on, and that's how we deploy. We deploy by where the problems are. If you look at this, though, you look at 2018, 2019, 2020, you see a significant drop from year-to-date, 2018 to 2019, 2019 to 2020. 2020, aberration because of COVID. We don't know how much that impacted. But when you look at 2021 compared to 2019, we are below where we were this time at 2019, our last pre-COVID normal year. So can we always do better? Yes, we want to do better on aggravated assaults. But we're not doing terribly, and we want to keep that trend going as well. Again, research. The University of California Goldman Policy Lab, they studied our footbeat deployment to see how that impacted aggravated assaults. That research was done in 2018. It's online if you want to take a look at it. What's proven is cops matter. When we increased our footbeat deployments, put them in those areas, high corridor areas, like the Tenderloin, assaults went down. We know it matters, and that's been proven by academic research. Next topic is burglaries. So as we talk about property crime, the narrative in San Francisco has been car break-ins it's been that way for a long time. But we're going to start with burglaries, because here's an area where we're struggling somewhat in terms of increases. We saw this trend start even before COVID. Last year, early 2020, we started to see burglaries go up. I can't really tell you with any scientific approach of why that was. We have our theories, because we started seeing burglaries grow up. We started to see other types of crimes go down. Could there have been some displacement? Maybe. But the sad reality is burglaries went up. Now, the majority of those were garage type of burglaries, where bicycles, tools, small things where people can run out quickly. That's where we're really getting hit in burglaries. The good news is this. We started the year off really in a hole in burglaries, and over the last 3.5, 4 months, we've seen burglaries decrease. We're at about a 4% increase year to date. However, it's still an increase. So some of the things that we've done, as the mayor said, we've made some drastic changes in deployment. The increased deployment, we believe, will drive this number down. A lot of these crimes happen overnight, where we're deployed. That's our lightest deployment. We had to make that adjustment, and we will continue to make that adjustment to keep the people that are doing this off balance, to let them know that you will see officers in these communities at night, overnight. And that makes a big difference. But burglaries are up. We hopefully we can continue to drive them down so we end the year in a negative. But we are going in the right direction mid-year compared to the way we started the year off. 2020, particularly last summer, we had a spike because of the civil unrest. We had a lot of looting for about 2 or 3 days, and we were able to get that under control and make many, many arrests from that. So 2020 is really not a great comparison year, but we have to compare it, and so you see what it looks like. Next, we'll go to larceny theft. So this has been the discussion about San Francisco larceny theft, which retail theft is in that category. As you can see, from 2017, and these are, again, mid-year numbers, to now, it's been a steady decrease in this category. Now, I will give you, not every crime is reported, but we can only go by what we know. It's been a steady decrease. It's counter to the narrative when you see a video and you think, oh my goodness, San Francisco is just out of control. The statistics are counter to the narrative. Not to say that these things that are happening they're brazen, they're heinous, they need to be stopped, people need to be held accountable, but the reality of the statistics are in front of you. With that said, there is much work to be done in retail theft. We have to work with the retailers and community members, and a lot of the things that the mayor said are coming into play, and it's challenging. It's very challenging. But what we can control is what we can control. That's our deployment, that's our strategies, our tactics to drive this down, to give the DAs the best cases that we can give them, and make sure that we are relentless, that when these crimes do happen, particularly when they're crews that have been mentioned earlier, that we identify who they are, the people that are perpetrating these crimes, and that we bring them to account for these crimes. And we actually do a pretty good job at that. But we got to get better, because this is something that people, it's personal to me when people look at our city and they think what they see on the video is what this city represents. We all live here, work here. This is a great city. And it's a safe city. But you wouldn't think it when you see a video of a man riding into a local pharmacy and having at it with whatever he wants to have at it with. He's in jail. And I want to send a message to others who have that idea. You will go to jail. We will catch you. Eventually, we will catch you. So let me make no mistakes about that. We're very good at what we do. We're committed to what we do. And we're going to keep going until we catch the people that are responsible for these crimes. So this is the reality of what we look like theft mid-year. And we hope to keep that going in the right direction and lessen the frequency of these viral videos that we keep seeing on the news and on social media. Next category is car break-ins. Here's the other thing that tends to go viral on the videos, car break-ins. Now, when you look at where we were in 2017 mid-year, it was the worst year we had ever had, 2017 car break-ins. We ended that year with over 31,000 car break-ins. We shifted our focus. We still made arrests, but we shifted our focus away from the apprehension part as much, more to footbeats and deployment in areas where we were getting really hurt with car break-ins, and we saw a dramatic turnaround almost instantly. You see 2017 to 2018 year to date, we ended 2018 significantly lower, almost 40% lower if my memory serves me, on car break-ins. That continued in 2019 and 2020. So 2021, we're starting to go back up, and we will get a handle on that. Deputy Chief Lazar, Assistant Chief Redmond, Commander Walsh, and Commander Ewens, before she retired, put together a plan that we believe will make a difference. Officers on the beat, more officers on the beat, in the corridors, particularly where people visit our city, the iconic places, the Palace of Fine Arts, Lombard Street, the beach areas, Fisherman's Wharf. That's where our problems are concentrated, and that's where we will be. We have to be there. We have to be consistent about our deployment, and we will continue to make arrests, but we also want to prevent some of these things from happening and drive some of this down, because as you can see, we are up about 700 crimes from where we were this time last year, and that is unacceptable. So we'll continue to put work in that area. We're willing to do the work. We need the officers to do it. But we're going to make do with what we have until we start to get academy classes through. We'll make it happen. And this is the image of our city that we're talking about. So we want to make sure that we take care of people understanding that you can come to San Francisco. It's a safe city. The SFPD, the mayor, our elected officials, we got your back. Next category. Auto thefts. So auto thefts are up. That's a 2-year trend. We started to see that also at the beginning of 2020 before COVID, and that trend has continued, not as significantly from 2019 to 2020. It's a less of an increase this year, but it's still up. And that is also an issue that we need to get a handle on. If you look at where we were back in 2015, we're down pretty significantly, but it's after a good year in 2018 and it went up a little bit in 2019, we're starting to go back up, and it's pretty significant from 2019 to 2021. So this is an area that we're going to focus on as well. And again, these are hard crimes to solve, but we're going to do everything that we can to keep this under wraps and keep this under control as well. The auto thefts are middle of the night type of crimes as well, and that's where nighttime deployment can impact this some. It's a very difficult case. Most of our auto thefts, we believe, or we recover a lot of the cars, or they get recovered in other jurisdictions. So that gives an indication that at least those recovered cars, it's not commercial crime crews that are doing that. It's probably more one-off type of auto thefts to commit other crimes or just for transportation. Nonetheless, when your car gets stolen, I don't think you really care who's stealing it. You just want your car back. And so we have to do all we can to make that situation better. So that is our mid-year statistics. As you can see, when you look at these over time, I think it paints a much different picture than watching a video that goes viral. And I don't want to be dismissive of the videos that have gone viral, because they're brazen, they're heinous, and they're awful. And we need to prevent those things from happening. And when they do happen, we need to arrest the people that are doing it. However, we want to keep perspective on the reality of what's really happening in terms of crime activity in our city, and I hope this provided some perspective for you. So that concludes our presentation. We'll be available for some questions, and thank you.